The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. At that time, Jesus said to his disciples, "There was a rich man who had a steward, and charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. And he called him and said to him, 'What is this that I hear about you? Turn in the accounts of your stewardship, for you can no longer be steward.' And the steward said to himself, 'What shall I do, since my master is taking the stewardship away from me? I am not strong enough to go farming, and I am ashamed to go begging. Now I've decided what to do, so that people may receive me into their houses when I am put out of the stewardship.' So, summoning his master's debtors one by one, he said to the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' And that one said, 100 measures of oil. He said to him, 'Take your pen and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, 'And you, how much do you owe?' And that one said, 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, 'Take your pen and write 80. Now the master commended the dishonest steward for his prudence. For the sons of this world are wiser in their own generation than the sons of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous mammon, so that when it fails you, they may receive you into the eternal habitations. He who is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much. And he who is dishonest in a very little is dishonest also in much. If then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will entrust you the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and Mammon." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise be to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Lead questions for today. Question number 1. Identify the link, if any, between the first reading from Amos 8:4-7 and the gospel reading from Luke 16:1-13. Identify the link, if any. 2. What human qualities, what human attributes or human abilities did Jesus find commendable in the dishonest steward? Or rather, did the master find commendable in the dishonest steward? Jesus was just narrating a story. What human qualities, attributes, or abilities did the master find commendable in the dishonest steward? And what lessons must we learn from the story? Question 3. Why do you think that Jesus refers to money in today's gospel? Take note, in very, very negative terms. Why did Jesus refer to money as that tainted thing? Some translation of the Bible says that corrupt thing, meaning that tainted thing, or he calls it unrighteous mammon. Mammon is some idol And not just some idol, but is qualified by unrighteous mammon. And that tainted thing, that corrupt thing. Why did Jesus refer to money as that tainted thing? And I do point out to people that, in Jesus' 3 years of ministry, what we read in the scripture is that he never put money in his pocket. He never carried money. So what's the problem? Why did Jesus refer to money as that tainted thing, that unrighteous mammon? Question 4. Of all the idols people worship in our society, money is probably the most common. People worship all kinds of idols. Perhaps money is the most common of the idols people worship in our society. Discuss briefly. Yes, Ebenezer.
Father, I want to try and attempt question number 3.
Yes.
First of all, I would like to say that I might be wrong, but I want to air out my
You are
opinion.
allowed to be wrong. You can be wrong, yes.
Father, so many times we make money. And some of us, God blesses us in such a way that we consider ourselves successful, or that we have achieved certain thing that's linked with money. And then we try to lay claim to the fact that we worked for it and we sweated for it. And so the money we made is clean. And sometimes to now even reach out to other people who are not privileged or who are not in our position, we find it difficult to do. I think Jesus Christ was trying to call our attention to the fact that anything money, no matter the source through which you get it, whether you got it in a clean way or in an unrighteous way, there is a way, one way or the other, that you must have changed somebody. For example, if you are working, you have an organization where you do production and people work for you, whatever profit you made at the end of the day, personally or as it is to all of us, we consider such money as clean. But Jesus was trying to open our eyes to see the fact that even money that comes through such sources, in one way or the other, is not clean.
Maybe that's too strong. May not be clean.
Yes, may not be clean, Father.
Okay, so may not be clean.
I would like to stop at this point, Father, because I'm not
And
sure.
since you are not so sure, yeah. Thank you very much for that humility that you may not be too sure. But he's making a point that very often people believe that their money is clean. But when you analyze it seriously, very little money is clean. Very little money is clean. I did say to you here, was it last Sunday, the wealth of most of Europe today is not clean because the original capital came from slave labor. So the one whose great-great-great-great-grandchild is a major entrepreneur in Europe, but whose great-great-great-great-grandfather had the plantations in America that they took millions of Africans to work in. Do you call that money clean? The one in Nigeria who is making a lot of money for paying slave wage and is smiling to the bank, making a lot of profit. You call that clean money? The one who is working in Nigeria, for example, who goes to work at 11 o'clock and closes at 2 p.m., and there are files and files to treat, and he doesn't treat it at the end of the month, he collects his money. You call that clean money? Is that not almost normal in this country? Where people, especially government work, where people get to work at 10 a.m. and leave work at 2 p.m. and hardly sign a file. The big man, the director, the minister, the DG, who every day is attending one marriage ceremony of one minister or one governor or the other, is going to attend another, the burial of a minister's father, is attending whatever, and there are files, urgent files to be treated. Week after week, he's not in the office because he's attending one ceremony. At the end of the month, he's collecting money. Is that clean money? Do you understand what we are talking about? Very little money is clean money. The ones that are selling tobacco and are killing people, the ones that are selling tramadol, and people are becoming mad in this country and they are smiling to the bank. Is that clean money? Very little money is clean money. Very little money is clean money. Yes, Solomon.
I'll attempt question number 2.
Yes.
The attributes or the qualities that was commendable in the story, the gospel, in my own thinking, are that the servant was prudent.
The servant was prudent. The steward is not a servant,
sorry,
actually.
sorry.
You need to know, in the context of biblical times, the steward was not a servant. The steward was a manager. The steward managed the goods of the entrepreneur. The steward was like a GM. The steward is not a servant, he's a GM. And you can see that from the prerogative that he had. A servant wouldn't have that kind of prerogative. So the steward, he was a manager, really.
Thank you, Father, for that correction. The steward was prudent. He was very firm and decisive.
He was decisive. He took action quickly. He was prudent. He was decisive. Yes, what
And
next?
above all, he was shrewd, very shrewd.
He
was shrewd.
He was shrewd.
Yes.
He was clever.
Yes. So the lesson that comes from that story is that as Christians, we must also make a fundamental choice between serving God and serving money. We must be decisive. Because once we are Christians, there are different parameters that guide us from non-Christians. So
there is one virtue, there is one attribute that you have not mentioned, which is linked to what you are trying to say, which is linked to our being Christians. What is it?
Well, I think that is being decisive. That's the point there.
One more.
Being decisive.
Who can support him before he makes the further comment? There's one more that is very important, especially as he is going to link it to what lessons now. Yes, Jacob, what is it? Mention it.
Also
courageous. Yes, but it's something more. Bisha, you're a leadership expert. Yes, focus, but yes, got his priorities right. But beginning with the end in view. Beginning with the end in view, he had a goal. And he was ready to invest today in order to achieve the goal. What am I going to do so that when I am taken out of this job, there will be people to welcome me to their homes? There will be people to open doors for me. Let me invest today. Let me invest today in order to harvest tomorrow. Is that not about the Christian life?
Yes.
And that is a very important thing. Investing today in order to have the benefit tomorrow, which is what many people lack. Deferred gratification. Sacrificing today in order to benefit tomorrow. Many people lack it, and that is the core of the Christian life. The one who loses his life will gain it. Yes?
Yes. But therefore, as Christians, every Christian, therefore, must make a choice, a fundamental choice at that, between serving God and serving money. Because as you always say in the chapel here, all the way to heaven is heaven. We must, as Christians, live out those values in line with the tenets of Christianity that will lead us to the ultimate destination, which is heaven.
Okay, so we must be decisive about our serving God. But more directly, Gregory, you want to help that? Give him a round of applause. He has said it. You concur?
I'm a question 1 now.
Okay.
Question 1. I think one thing that actually linked the two is cheating.
Cheating.
Yes, it's honesty.
Dishonesty.
Yes.
So between the first reading and the gospel,
Yes.
the common denominator is dishonesty. Not just dishonesty and injustice.
Injustice.
Right? Injustice. Amos is known for the prophet that railed and railed against injustice, especially against the poor.
That's why he's called the prophet of social justice.
Prophet of social justice. Give him a round of applause. Yes, Bishop.
I would like to attempt question 4.
Yes.
Clearly, a lot of the things that we do wrong in our society today, especially the petty and the grand acts of corruption that are prevalent in Nigeria, whether it is exam malpractice that is done by parents and children and teachers, whether it is manipulation of our ages in our offices, whether it is stealing, whether it is pen fraud, all the things, whether it is beating traffic lights.
Did I tell you, before you finish, did I tell you about manipulating age? There is one story I heard that is very, that is very interesting. I have somebody who is working in one of the states. And then they were filling forms. The senior staff were filling forms. He got to one place about age in the form. And somebody carried phone and phoned the headquarters of that parastatal and said, Mbo, we file me ke wo age woni mo kosi benye. Abeg, check my file and see which age did I write there. Only form time filling be age woni mo kosi benye ni file ni headquarter. Which age did I write in the headquarters? I mean, things are so bad that he can't even remember, because as he is filling many forms, there are different ages. He can't remember which age he put in that one so that it may be consistent with this one. Now and I'm told he was saying it in the open. I mean, there were many people sitting down. And since it's taken for granted that everybody does it, what kind of rotten society is this?
And, Father, like you said, a lot of people have taken these things to become normal. And that's why I said even the so-called petty acts of corruption, that all of them are all done because we are afraid that we will not have money, that we will not make money, that we will not be successful. So people cheat in exams.
And then when you say successful, please, even as Ebenezer says,
yes,
when you say successful, always qualify it.
Yes.
Successful materially.
Really, yes.
Because there are many successful people who have no money. Yes. I mean, let's acknowledge that, right? There are many success, because we Christians must project. We must project successful people. The woman in Lagos at the Muritala Mohammed Airport who constantly found big monies, 5 million, 10 million, 12 million, 7 million, and constantly returns the money. She's a successful person. She's a successful person. She lives in some decrepit place in Ajegunle, but she's a successful person because she's going to continue to be a point of reference. 100 years after she's dead, her name will be there as a poor person who constantly found big money, and her conscience said, no, this is not your money. She's a successful person. So let's not measure success in this narrow thing about having a big car, having a big house. You're a woeful failure with your big car. You're a woeful failure with your big house if you have no integrity. So let's constantly talk about success and qualify it in material terms.
And those people, and a lot of people do this in society, as I was saying, Father, because of the fear that they may not be able to meet their needs, their wants, because they don't have money. So they will do anything at all to get money. And the idolatry in it, which is very important, is that they forget that the person who gave them life, the person who gave them education, the person who gave them the money they have, the jobs they have, the person who has allowed them to have good enough health to be alive, to sign the fraudulent checks, that person would always take care of their needs.
Okay. Amos, the great champion of justice, social justice. Amos was a farmer. Amos did not go to the seminary. He was never trained to be a prophet. He had no link with any of the groups of prophets, professional prophets. In Israel, there were professional prophets. Amos was called directly by God to preach. He had a particular mission to preach against the gross inequality between the rich and the poor. Amos will be one of those that will be challenged as happen too much on the issue of equality. And people will say, no, equality is not possible now. It's not human beings. Fingers are not equal. And whenever people say fingers are not equal, I look at my fingers and I see how each one is well fed. Yeah, some are longer than others, but each one is well fed. No finger is starved. They are not equal. They don't eat the amount of food, the same amount, but each one is well fed. I mean, when you think about it, the poor in Nigerian society, are the poor people asking to use Lamborghini car? Do the poor people care if a rich man is using Lamborghini car? As long as they have a bus next door, they can walk out of their house and can jump into a bus. The poor people don't care. Are the poor people asking to live in a 10-bedroom flat in Asokoro? No. They are just asking to have some roof over their head. 2-room apartment in Womba, in Dede, in Dutse, in wherever. They're just asking to have a roof over their head. And if possible, to have some electricity and some water. That's all the poor people are asking. Once you provide that, you can have your Lamborghini if you want. The poor people don't care. Right? The poor people are not asking to have all these flashy things. No. They want to be able to send their children to school. And I hope you know that in organized places, better organized places, all children have an equal head start. Somebody said, who was it that said here that last Sunday that, children have the same opportunities, but then some people use the opportunity and do better. No, in Nigeria, children don't have the same opportunities. From the womb, unfortunately, in this country, some people are already disadvantaged, disenfranchised from the womb. When a child is in the womb, 3 months, 6 months pregnant, and the slum dwelling that the parents are, it is being demolished and they have to move and be refugees, moving from one relation's place to the other while the mother is pregnant. That child is already disadvantaged because the child is traumatized in the womb. When a child is born in a place like Germany, where I had the opportunity to live for a while, every child goes to school and is paid for by government for the first primary school and up to GSS 3. Paid for by government. And in many societies it is so. Go and find out in Sweden. And those are the people that will rule the world, though. They are the ones that will rule the world. Every child is supposed to have opportunity to have good education. And by the way, in those societies, government schools are of higher quality than private schools. And every child, whether you go to private school or government school, if you decide to go to Ansaruddin school or Roman Catholic school, you have something budgeted for each child that will go to that school. This is what we should be fighting for. That whether I decide to take my child to St. John's primary school or I decide to take the child to LGA school, if the child is entitled to a certain amount of money in government, is also entitled to that amount of money in the private school. We sit down there and we just claim that we are helpless, and yet a lot of people occupy positions and they sit down there. But every child in Nigeria doesn't have the same opportunity. Many children are already disenfranchised from the beginning. Now, a child that grows up, let me tell you, one child in Abuja is in a school, primary school, nursery school, primary school, where they are paying 300,000, 200,000 per term. And you can imagine the quality of education, right? And another child in the same Abuja is in some hole called a school where they are paying 3,000, 4,000. You can imagine the quality of education. And are you able to tell me that they have been given equal opportunity? No. If I ever hear any of you saying, any of you privileged saying that it is my hard work that made me like that, I will deal with you. Many of us are privileged, and we must acknowledge that we are privileged. It's not your hard work, because you go to those slums and pick those children and see some of them will beat you. They will do very well, and you'll be ashamed. Prophet Amos came out to challenge this gross inequality against the callous exploitation of the poor by the rich businessmen and women who paid lip service to God on the Sabbath while exploiting the poor the rest of the week. Amos was one of those prophets that shouted, say, what is all this nonsense? Going to kneel down and get up, going to offer sacrifice, go pay tithe, do all this, when you are oppressing your nanny. Free your nanny, and then your sacrifice will be accepted. Otherwise, you are wasting your time. That's what Amos says. You are cheating people. As you are cheating, every time there is any kind of inflation in this country, they increase fuel by 5%. The price of goods will go 50%. Right? If they increase VAT by 30-40%, the price of goods will go 50%. Somebody is cheating. I mean, if they increase VAT by 30-35%, then the goods should go by 35%. Actually, VAT is paid separately, isn't it? VAT is paid separately. But in this country, what often happens? Oh, it even says some 100%. The very next day after they increase fuel, if they increase fuel by 10%, the next day you go to the motor park to enter the vehicle, it is 100%. Something is wrong. Many of us are cheats, dishonest. So every opportunity to make more money, you make more money. Even when people are crying, make more money off people who are already starving. That's what Prophet Amos was talking about. Then on Sunday, on Friday, you go to the mosque. On Sunday, you go to the church. And you're doing, praise the Lord, oh, single. Amos had none of the polished diplomatic language of the official prophets of the time. You know, the real prophet is not diplomatic, cannot be diplomatic. I mean, a very diplomatic person cannot be a prophet. He was very passionate about the injustices of the day, and he denounced them frankly. He denounced them openly. He denounced them bluntly and vigorously. Amos was hurting inside, and he screamed in protest. You see, prophets are often people who love their people very much. They love their people very much, very passionate about their people, but also very passionate about God. He mourned the loss of fidelity and the absence of true religion in the land. Because what is true religion? To love tenderly, to do justice, and to walk humbly before your God. That's true religion. Love tenderly. Do justice. True religion is not offering sacrifices. He did not accept that injustice is inevitable. There are many people who have accepted that the way things are, there's not much we can do about it. That's the way of the world. I do hear people say, but that's the way of the world. I don't want to live in that kind of world. That kind of world, I don't want to live in it. If that's the way of the world, you can go ahead and live in that kind of world. I don't want to live in that kind of world. Christians are supposed to be living in the world as it ought to be, not as it is. We are supposed to constantly defy the world as it is and attempt to be living life as it ought to be. How did I say it? We are supposed to be living life as it ought to be, not as it is. As it is, that is what Jesus Christ has come to deal with now. If it is good as it is, do we need Jesus? If it is good as it is, do we need the gospel? I mean, it's the same kind of thing when I talk about our various cultural practices. People say, Father, it's our culture, it's our culture. Oh, if your culture was excellent, then you don't need Jesus. Jesus came because all is not well as it is. And he has come to turn things around to be the way it ought to be. You remember what he said about when they were talking about divorce. But Moses allowed us to divorce our wives. He said, it is because of your stubbornness of heart Moses did that. But I say to you, this is not how it was in the beginning. And now, if you want to follow me, this is how it should be. So don't tell me how it is. Let's start discussing how it is supposed to be. Amos had none of the polished language, as I said. He declared that their elaborate prayers and ritual sacrifices were useless. Can you read what he said? Spare me the din of your chanting. Let me hear none of your strumming on the lyre. But let justice flow like water and righteousness like a never-failing stream. Says all this, the one that Ajayi will be beating, bagam, 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 and all this. He says, spare me all that. Say, God is not hearing any of that. Make it loud as you wish. God is not hearing. Let justice flow like water and righteousness like a never-failing stream. Amos 5:23-24. What is the point of prayer vigils? Of what use is prayer vigils? Of what use is loud praises? Of what use is loud dry fasts and white fasts and pilgrimages when the consciences of those who trample on the weak and exploit the poor in the land are not touched? There is a close affinity between ritual worship, acts of worship, prayers, fasting, pilgrimage, and a clean conscience, isn't it? And how we relate with our neighbor. I have just said earlier, talking about what makes people happy. If you don't relate with your neighbors well, you are a sad person. Same thing. You can be doing all the prayers, be doing dry fast, be doing everything. If you don't relate well with your neighbor, you are not a godly person. Religious worship is an affront to God rather than honoring God. Worship is supposed to ordinarily honor God. But not all worship honors God. Worship is an affront to God when those who pretend to be religious are allies of the oppressive class against the poor and the weak. When you are conspiring with the powerful to oppress the poor, then whatever you call worship is actually an insult. When religious practice is not sufficiently critical of social justice, one of the things we really lack in this society is called critical social analysis. We don't do good social analysis. And we really need training in social analysis. Exactly what those guys did in South Africa, because they don't do critical social analysis. That xenophobia that was killed in South Africa. What they lack, we also lack. Because when we are suffering the cumulative effect, of a small class of people that have destroyed this country, what do? We look at the other tribe as responsible. We look at people of the other religion as responsible. True or false? No social analysis. And all leaders of thought should constantly gather their people and teach them and make them know the people who have put us in this mess. And the people who have put us in this mess, they come from North and south and east and west and Igbo and Hausa and Yoruba and Tiv and Jukun all over. Recently, a list was released of the people who owe the government 5-point-something trillion naira, AMCON. Right? Some of you saw it. Yes. Don't they come from north and south and east and west? 5-point-something trillion. That is equivalent to 1 year's budget of Nigeria. And how many of them? About 20 Nigerians. Tomorrow you come and tell me that it is one part of the country that is putting us here. We really need serious social analysis. Why are we where we are? We are all oppressed in this country. Go to Damaturu, go to Zamfara, go to Yobe and see the poverty of the poor. Their big men are oppressing them. And go to Onitsha, and go to Nobi and see. I look at the slum, urban slum that Onitsha is. Urban slum. All those tall buildings, no air. As if no town planning, no water supply, no nothing. Urban slum. But Anambra State has some of the richest Nigerians. Just go to everywhere. Go to Bubura. Go to Edemepat. And Akwa Ibom State is the richest state in Nigeria. Akwa Ibom State is richer than many African countries put together. But go and see the destitution of life in many of those places. We need social analysis. We need to keep pointing the attention of our people to those who have put us in this mess. And not just look at, can you imagine anybody coming from Akwa Ibom State, anybody coming from Delta State, to begin to point across the country to the people who are putting them in this mess? Bishe, you are from Delta State. The governor of Delta is not Fulani. Yes. Can you imagine that Delta State, Akwa Ibom State, that anybody from there can point at anybody anywhere, putting them in the mess, when we know the kind of resources that those states have generated? We need social analysis. We need to train our people to recognize that the 95% of Nigerians are oppressed by less than 5% of the people. We need that. This is the kind of thing Amos was talking about. And in our churches, pastors, priests and preachers and evangelists need to help their people with social analysis to recognize that there is something wrong in the way we carry on. And it is not enough to honor people for bringing big money to church. People's consciences must be challenged. When people come to church in a country like Nigeria, they should go home with their head bowed, thinking about, what can I do? It is not all the time people come to church that they should go home rejoicing. Many times they should go home weeping, with a commitment as to what is going to change in the manner they conduct their lives. Amos says that many people cannot claim to belong to God while living off the misery of the poor. We need an Amos in this country. We need Amos in every part of this country. We are all shouting now, Boko Haram, bandits, Boko Haram in the northeast, bandits in northwest, all kinds of things all over the place. But we know what the leaders have done to children in that place. We know how millions of children have been left for generations without school. We know how those places have been robbed. Once upon a time, some of the richest human beings in this country were in Borno State. Once upon a time. We had people in this country, in Meduguri that built houses with gold. Everything inside was gold. We had people. And neglected the poor. We are harvesting the consequences of what we did. Right. And we need this social analysis. This is what is called social analysis. This is our problem today. How did we get here? And don't buy all that nonsense on social media that it is because of the other tribe, it is because of the other religion. Don't buy all that nonsense. And I don't want anybody in Luke's Terra to buy all that nonsense. Ask yourself, how well has your local government been run? Ask yourself, how well has your state been run? When your governor carries all your money and takes overseas, then you are suffering the consequences of no resources. Then you are calling another tribe. What kind of idiots are you? We need social analysis. We need to think, use our heads. Religion cannot sit on the same pew with greed for money and lust for power. No. Religion cannot sit on the same pew with greed for money and lust for power. When religious worship is carried on along with greed and corruption and oppression, it is nothing but empty ritualism or meaningless drama. Such religion neither honors God nor sanctifies the person. I say the religion that sits on the same pew with greed and lust for money, that is no religion. It is empty ritualism. It is meaningless drama. Such religion does not honor God. Such religion does not sanctify the person. Now in the gospel story, Jesus tells of a dishonest but shrewd steward. Threatened with dismissal for dishonesty, he summons his master's debtors and persuades them to rewrite their indebtedness for less than they actually owe. I explained to you that he had the prerogative to do that. The master didn't query what he did he? You see, he had a prerogative. He had authority, he had a prerogative. The issue is, how did he use his prerogative? That's the point of the story. Don't think, but this person is dishonest. You miss the point. How did he use his prerogative? And all of us are in positions with some prerogative. How are you using your prerogative? He used his prerogative, asked them to rewrite their indebtedness for less than they actually owe, and in this way, he assured himself of a place with these creditors when he eventually loses his job. Now, in a time of crisis, the steward takes firm and immediate action. Decisiveness that Solomon talked about. You understand? He was decisive. He took firm and immediate action using the resources available to him to ensure his own future. And Jesus is going to say, use that corrupt thing that is in your hand called money. Use it to make friends that will welcome you into heaven. Because Jesus had constantly told us that the poor are the friends of God. It is the poor people you help that will open the door for you in heaven. Is that not what Jesus keeps saying? He told us very clearly that the rich are a bit far away from God. That the poor are the ones that are closer. So, if you want to join in the company of heaven, you better have as many poor friends as possible. If a dishonest man can use his master's money to ensure that there will be friends to welcome him when he is out of his job, how much more those who call themselves children of God? By the way, all of us, with whatever money is in your hand, is it not the master's money? Let's look at it critically. Which of the money in your hands or the property in your hand is your own? Which one is your own? We are like that dishonest steward, though. We are like that dishonest steward. The property is not our own. So how are you dispensing it to ensure that there will be friends to welcome you when you are checked out of this place? Whether they use gold for your coffin, you are still going to check out. And actually, if they use gold for your coffin, they won't let you enter that. The poor people who see the waste you are wasting will not let you enter that place. I tell you. If you allow that to happen, you better write in your will, as I have put in my will, you better write in your will that nobody should waste money on expensive coffin for you, so that the poor may welcome you into heaven. I've been writing it in my will for the past 30 years. I've been renewing my will, and I've been writing it. Cut and nail. plank, cut and nail. If you allow them to go and buy millions of coffin for you, I'm telling you, you miss an opportunity for poor people to beg for you in that place. Jesus even goes ahead to hold that man up as an example. What did he say? Can you read? I tell you, make friends for yourself with dishonest wealth, so that when it fails you, you will be welcomed into the eternal kingdom. Just take note of what I kept saying. Take note of the fact that Jesus never had a good word for wealth. You know, all the people who preach prosperity gospel and a lot of money and so on, they have missed a point. The point they miss is that, if you are a Christian, there is a problem. Jesus constantly referred to money as dishonest, as tainted. There's a problem. We all like money, isn't it? We all like money, and we like plenty of it. But Jesus is warning us, be careful. The more of it you have, the more endangered you are. The only way by which your money will not put you into trouble, right? The only way by which your money is not going to put you into trouble is what? Is let it go. Let it flow. As it is coming, let it flow. Jesus says the children of light can learn one or two things from the children of darkness. Are you getting that point? Now, this is the point Jesus is making. The children of light can learn one or two things from the children of... Two, evil people are often industrious in their evil ways. Evil people are often single-minded in their evil ways. Evil people are often focused in their evil ways. Evil people are often prepared to make sacrifices. Look, let me tell you. If they ask all the people who want to do demonstration for gay, to legalize gay and homosexuality in Nigeria, homosexual marriage, you won't need to give them transport money. They will come from all over the country to Abuja to demonstrate. If you now say, oh, Christians, please come and do opposite demonstration, they will say, I have no transport money. True or false? This is the reality. Say, Christians, come to Abuja and demonstrate, because the people who want legalization of homosexuality are plenty and they are gathering in Abuja. Come so that we do the opposite demonstration. It is then you will discover that evil people are often industrious, single-minded, focused, and prepared to make sacrifices in order to achieve their evil ends. But my brothers and sisters, they sit down there and they think that the world will be fashioned in the way they want by doing nothing. Are you getting my point? Let's sit down there. I mean, that's it. I do all that we are doing here, the little effort we are trying to do in Luke's Terra. Do we get support? Where are we going to get it? But let some evil person, he will get support. He will get support. And yet you expect the world to change for the better. Edmund Burke says what? All it takes for evil to triumph is that good people do nothing. Till today, good people are doing nothing. And that is why evil is. You know, I have constantly asked you here, what is it that you are doing in the world for Christ's sake? Ask yourself, what sacrifices are you making in the world for Christ's sake? Some people say they are Christians. They are making no sacrifice for Christ's sake. And you think the kingdom of Christ will spread. And there is another kingdom that is spreading, and people are making sacrifices for it to spread. You getting my point? Everyone here, nobody here is too poor, is too weak to make some sacrifice for Christ's sake. I don't know, but people will not. And you think the world is just going to change. God has done his own part. God has left the rest to us to do. But you're not prepared to make sacrifices. All it takes for evil to triumph is that good people do nothing. Today's story is told, 1, to teach Christians the wise use of that tainted thing, the wise use of money. 2, to stress the impossibility of any compromise between God and Mammon. There can be no compromise. 3, to emphasize that, can you read? To use money wisely is to constantly give it away rather than hoarding it and thereby ensure one's salvation. To use money, what is the wise use of money? It is to give it away. The dishonest steward gave away the wealth at his disposal for the sake of the future. What are you giving away for the sake of the future? Yes. So for Jesus, money equals mammon. It is tainted. Tainted wealth or unrighteous mammon. It is contaminated riches or lustful possessions. These are the expressions the New Testament has, especially Jesus has, for wealth. Unfortunately, everybody here is looking for wealth. I'm not saying you should stop looking for wealth. I'm not saying you should stop looking for wealth. Look for wealth, but be warned, right? Be warned that wealth equal mammon. Tainted wealth, unrighteous mammon, contaminated riches. What does tainted mean if not contaminated? Do you understand? St. Paul says to Timothy, chapter 6, verse 9 to 10. Can we read? Those who want to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And in their eagerness to be rich, many have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many fatal wounds. Honor here. Are they my words? Again, let's read. Those who want to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And in their eagerness to be rich, many have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many fatal wounds. So you see, Christianity has a problem with wealth, isn't it? Just know that, last Sunday somebody said that I'm preaching poverty gospel. But just know that it is not me. Christianity has a problem. All we have been saying, are they my words? Christianity has a problem with because human beings don't manage wealth well. Human beings don't manage wealth well. That is the reality. That is the history of the world. So, riches either serve or govern the possessor. Already it says, riches either serve or they govern the possessor. And it is very hard for them to serve the possessor. They often govern the possessor. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. Proverbs 11:4. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. The question for you today is this. The critical question is, how much has following Jesus cost me? Too many people think that you can just come to church. And they think that they are doing well. After all, I go to church regularly. If it has not cost you anything, Jesus says, no one can be a follower of mine unless he carries his cross every day. What crosses are you carrying? What has following Jesus cost you? If it has not cost you some serious thing, you love money, right? If you really love money and you love to live big and so on and so forth, has following Jesus cost you that passion for money? What has following Jesus cost me? Heavenly Father, we thank you. We praise you. We glorify your holy name for your many blessings. Thank you for your love and your goodness. Thank you once again for letting us know that accepting your call requires total commitment. Help us to listen to the words of Prophet Amos. Help us to listen to the words of your Son Jesus, to recognize that we are either all for you or we are not for you. We cannot serve you while loving the things of the world too much. Help us to treat money, that tainted thing, with Christian wisdom. Help us to recognize that all wealth is tainted, all material wealth is tainted, is contaminated. Therefore, that we need to have a godly attitude towards it. And that we need to Let this wealth pass through us. As they come, we use them to uplift your children, to promote a better world to the glory of your name. Lord, we pray that our leaders will know how better to organize our society. That people will be lifted up abject, dehumanizing poverty. That the same wealth that is making many Nigerians stupendously rich, that same wealth may be better distributed, that no one will be in the kind of dehumanizing poverty we see today, and that no one will desire to own the whole world, recognizing that what does it profit a man if we gain the whole world and lose our soul? Lord, help us to know how to relate with wealth and with riches to the glory of your name, through Christ our Lord.